So I keep hearing this phrase remote viewing, which I sort of picture in my head what it is. I don't really know what it is. I don't know if it's real or not. The government's involved. What do you know about remote viewing?
First, tell me what you think it is.
I think remote viewing is, I'm like actually being a little bit false. I have some sense of what it is. It's the ability to see things that are very far from your physical proximity. So you like close your eyes and you can all of a sudden look into a room 1,000 miles away. I think it's true that CIA worked to evoke this ability in people. But I kind of want to know the state of play. Is that actually real? Do we know that it's real?
We know that it's real. Remote viewing probably started at the beginning of the human race, but remote viewing that we're talking about started in 1972, Stanford Research Institute. Russell Targ and Hal Puthoff, physicists, scientists, were just studying psychic phenomenon. Just, where here's a shape on a card, that's seen at the beginning of Ghostbusters. Is it a star? Is it a circle? They're doing that sort of thing. And a man walks in. His name is Ingo Swann. He's become a very famous psychic. And at this point, Targ and Puthoff are essentially advertising on campus, psychics wanted. So he walks in and says, I'm the best psychic in the world. So they give him a card to read, and he says, give me something hard to do. I'm like, well, like what? Send somebody out in the San Francisco Bay Area, and I'll tell you where they are and what they see. It's like, okay, we'll do that. So they send somebody out, and he just starts to kind of focus and concentrate, and he starts to draw. So, I see a water fountain, but there's no water in it. I see these circles on the ground. I see a building, and turns out he got it all right. He described the pattern of the walkway. There was a fountain there that was not on that particular day. The building was exactly where they said it was. And then they realized, okay, we have something different here than a shape on a card. They said, well, Ingo, where can you go? And he said, I can go anywhere. Like anywhere? Like anywhere in space and time. I have a whole episode of Ingo remote viewing the moon, but let's stick with this for now. So they test Ingo Swann a few times. Uri Geller was another one they tested who was able to see things inside safes, and there are a few other psychics. Pat Price is my personal favorite. Joe McMonagle is a very famous one. But what got CIA's attention was at Stanford, buried deep underground was a magnetometer. And this was used to measure perturbations in the Earth's crust to detect nuclear explosions. So this is an important device. It's buried underground, shielded by cement, superconducting, shielding, like you can't get to it. Ingo is able to draw what it looks like. And he says, I could even move that needle. I said, go for it. So he moves the needle. Now, they're excited. The experiment works, but that needle moving means a nuclear explosion just went off somewhere. So the CIA government gets involved. They want what's going on. It's not a nuclear explosion. Oh, we're doing this program. And they say, you're doing what? And they don't really care that he can move a needle. They're worried about he can see inside behind cement, and that means there's no more secrets. So the CIA starts funding this project through various front companies. And all intelligence agencies want to get involved with this. It comes to a peak. This is before Pat gets involved, but it's an interesting story. It's called the Sugar Grove break-in. There's a CIA analyst. There's a bunch of CIA people there. CIA analyst says, here are coordinates. They give to Ingo Swann. Nobody knows what the coordinates are. The analyst won't tell. The handlers won't tell. Nobody knows. Here are the coordinates. And Ingo does his thing, and he says, I see a guard house. There's a radar, giant radar dish. And there's it looks like a military. There's accordion roll-up doors. There's jeeps. It's military. It's some type of military installation. He draws it. The mountains are here. The road's here. There's the river. Detailed map. Says, That's what I saw. And they give it to the analyst, say, here, is this it? And the guy's like, it's not even close. I gave you the coordinates of my vacation house in West Virginia. Then they were like, oh, shit. Okay. So that didn't work. But Pat Price comes along, and Pat Price may be the most talented psychic ever. He remote views the same location, sees the same things without knowing anything what Ingo saw. And you look at the maps, they're almost identical. Radar dish, guard tower, roll-up doors. But Pat is very talented. He says, I see a building. I'm going into the building. Let me back up for a second. Pat Price, retired police officer from Burbank, always had an intuition to solve crimes. Where's the body? Price knows. Where's the suspect hiding? Price knows. He just thought he had a hunch. But he retired and started to develop this skill and heard about this program and got involved. So that's Pat Price. So he sees the same things. So now that's clearly not a coincidence. So this is not a log cabin vacation home. What's going on there? So SRI sends someone to the coordinates. They find the vacation, they found the log cabin, and they're like, but there's a dirt road here about 200 feet. We'll follow the road. And they follow the road down just over the ridge in West Virginia in Sugar Grove, and there's the guardhouse. It's a military installation, and they can't enter, but they could see there's a radar dish. The problem was Pat Price went into the building. He said, I see green filing cabinets. All right, Pat, what else? It says Operation Pool. Okay. He said, I'm going through the folders. Cue ball, cue stick, rack up, 8-ball. All very specific. It turns out that caused every law enforcement agency in the country to show up at SRI. And they wanted to know why this weird CIA pet project was spying on the most secret NSA facility in the world. Not just secret, but so top secret that even the names of the projects, which were cue ball, rack up, all of this, were top secret. This is a facility to spy on Russian satellites. Nobody knew it was there. The CIA analysts didn't know it was there. So Ingo and Pat, just their consciousness, they just assumed, well, they don't care about the log cabin. This is the CIA. They obviously want us to look at this. So from then on, every intelligence agency had psychics working, all of them. None of them admitted to it, but they all had psychics working for them. And
I know that the Iran rescue operation in 1980 had one.
Correct. That was Joe McMonagle who found that. This operation, I think, was leaked by Jimmy Carter in 96, who was giving a talk at a college. And some kid asked him, like, what's the weirdest thing that ever happened when you were president? And he said, in his peanut farmer voice, we had this Russian bomber go down in Africa, and we needed to get there before the Soviets. We didn't know how to do that. But we knew we had this group of psychics that could see stuff, and they were helping solve, because they were involved with the Patty Hearst kidnapping. They helped find that. But that's not why they reported, but it happened. So they had a remote viewer who was really just like a receptionist that they trained to do this. Because this is an ability that we can all do. She found where that bomber went down, and the American military was able to get there before the Russians and retrieve this bomber. This is all documented. And Carter just kind of let that slip. And that was sort of the end of the public knowing about.
That was the whole reveal?
It kind of was. It was called Project Stargate at this time, but it was originally Project Scanate and Grill Flame and Center Lane and some other names like that. Project Stargate is the one that everybody knows. So they test Pat Price again, and they say, rather than spy on ourselves, let's see what he can see on the Soviet side. And Pat draws this. He says, I see a science fiction crane, and he draws it out. It's a big gantry crane, which is like a 100-foot tall crane that sits on railroad tracks. It's a huge thing. And he draws it and shows it to CIA, and they can't believe it, but it matches aerial photography. So he sees it. So now they want to know, what is this thing? He says, I don't know what it is, but underground are these 60-foot metal spheres, but they don't work. Nobody knows what they are. It later comes out that they weren't 60-foot spheres, they were 58 feet, and they were containment for nuclear material, but They didn't work. So he saw that. That was Pat Price. CIA is so impressed with his work that they say, you just come and work for us. So they pulled him out of SRI, and he's exclusively working for CIA at that point. He's doing some of his own remote viewing kind of on the side, some, not espionage. He's looking around. And his most famous one is he remote viewed Mount Hayes in Alaska. And he sends his consciousness into the mountain, and he sees inside the mountain tall, thin alien beings working alongside American military. He sees it inside the mountain. Now, people have gone up there. There's no way in. There's no way out. I can't prove any of it, but this is what he saw. So he takes that information. He gives it to Hal Puthoff. Hal's no longer with Stargate at this point. I think it's run by Skip Atwater. Could be wrong, but I think it was Skip. Gives it to Skip, and Skip passes it along. Just a couple of days later, Pat is in Las Vegas, and he's in the hotel lobby, in front of the elevators, heading up to his room. Someone bumps into him, and he feels like a pinch on his leg. Goes upstairs, calls his wife to say goodnight. She says, you don't sound good. He says, I don't feel well. He says, say goodnight, and he's found dead the next morning. 58 years old. They called it a heart attack, but no autopsy is done. Someone comes in with credentials, and they say, we'll take it from here. Pat's body's cremated, and then they call his wife and say what happened. And Pat's now buried in an unmarked grave in North Hollywood, which you can find if you want to pay your respects, if that's where Pat is. Pat Price, probably the most talented that there was. Joe McMoneagle is famous. He's still around, by the way, still remote viewing. He's the one who found a large building like 100 yards from water in the Soviet Union and didn't know what they were building in there. He starts sketching a submarine. Like, all right, they're building a sub. And he says, no, this is different. It's like two subs together. It's like a twin sub. They're like, what are you talking about? It's a twin hull sub. He said, it's giant. He said, I've never seen anything this big. And they're going to launch it in 120 days. That's kind of specific. And 118 days later, the Russian Typhoon class sub is launched, and it's the largest submarine ever made, and it's a twin-hulled sub. And Joe saw that. Now, he claims his success rate is like 90-95%. CIA says it's lower than that, but he saw that. And Joe McMoneagle, he's received the Order of Merit, which I think is the second highest award you can get I think it's the second highest as a civilian from the military. And in his citations for 200 successful missions, 150 of which provided vital intelligence to American operations. But it doesn't say anything more than that. But that's in his official citation. Now, all this kind of comes out, and I think Gates was DCI at this point. He goes on TV and says, there's nothing to this Stargate thing. No real intelligence has come from it, and we're shutting it down. And that was kind of the last that happened with Stargate.
Publicly.
I think it continues because the Soviets were trying to do the same thing at the time. And they allegedly got it to work. Now, interestingly enough, Soviet and American remote viewers, they get together and they teach each other and actually practice.
Christmas feels like just yesterday, but in fact, it's already time to think about Lent. Lent is a great chance to step back, examine our lives, and decide whether or not we're headed somewhere worth going. This Lent, we strongly recommend the world's top #1 prayer app. It's called Hallow. Its Lent prayer challenge starts February 18th. It's called Pray 40, The Return. Transformation does not start with improvement. No, transformation starts with repentance, the courage to admit that you are lost and change direction. Pray 40 forces you to confront that responsibility, forgiveness, and what it means to truly repent and live a life of meaning by following Jesus. Every day, enjoy simple, deliberate prayer. No spectacle, no performance, just silence, honesty, and one small step toward renewal. This is not about fixing your life overnight. It's about beginning the journey home. Pray 40, The Return, starts Wednesday, February 18th and runs right through Easter. Download Hallow for free at hallow.com/Tucker. Thanks for watching our YouTube channel. We hope you'll subscribe to it. And by the way, you can hit the little bell on there and get notifications every time we produce a video. We hope you'll do that also.